us, and this is the Parliamentarian training. And just, I want you to realize before we ever start that no one expects you to learn this all in one training. I've been doing this a lot of years, and it takes a long time, and you're learning new things all the time. So try not to get too overwhelmed. At the end of this, I will give you my phone number and my email. And we also have some handouts that I had sent to Barbara, but I don't know if they got forwarded to anybody. So I have handouts that we would normally put in a packet if you came to a training. If you send me an email and tell me you like them, I can send them to you electronically. That's the best I can do under these circumstances. Okay, ready to get started. The overview of the training is that we're going to talk a little bit about the parliamentarian role and the duties of a parliamentarian, parliamentary law in general, how to make motions, how to vote, and of course, bylaws and e-bylaws. And when it comes to bylaws, if you need any help, normally my car goes on auto drive and I go out to people's houses or schools or whatever to work with them. I can't under these circumstances, but if you send whatever you have and you need help with doing bylaws, I'm happy to help you electronically or over the phone. Okay. First of all, the parliamentarian, if you have any questions, put it in chat and then Colleen can tell me, okay? The parliamentarian is an appointed officer. I've come to schools where I've seen them try to hold an election for the parliamentarian when they're doing their elections. No, it is an appointed officer by the president and ratified by the board. The parliamentarian is a consultant and an advisor to the president, but that doesn't mean that the parliamentarian interrupts the meetings and says, oh no, you're doing that wrong. You never want to make the president look bad. So just only if you're asked, then you can consult on bylaws or on parliamentary procedure, whatever the president is asking you. As a parliamentarian, it has to be a member, just like everybody on your board, so has all the rights and privileges of a member. Next. All right, parliamentarian is an assistant to the president. Usually the parliamentarian sits right next to the president at the table so that he or she can jot down the names of people who have their hands up, because people like to be called in the order that they put their hands up, or they tend to get a little testy. So the parliamentarian writes down the names and slides them over to the president so the president can see who to call on next. He or she keeps track of the parliamentary procedure, and as part of that, you should probably always have a Robert's Rules of Order with you. I use the little, I can't think what it's called, the rules in, it's a condensed version. And it's a smaller version, because if you read through the whole Robert Rules of Order, it'll take you forever to look something up. So I try to keep the smaller version with me, and then it's easier to find things, because not everything in there you're going to use as a PTA. Meeting preparation, be prepared for the meeting. If there's anything that the president wants you to do to get ready for the meeting, you help her or him. You track the speakers. That's what I was saying before. You write down their names for the president. And then, of course, you listen to the proceedings in case there are any parliamentary questions that come up, that you can advise the people and tell them what they need to do. Okay. Any questions so far? Colleen, none?
Nope.
Yep.
Okay, let's go
I
on.
have one.
Okay.
Oh, hello. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. You mentioned the rules, the condensed version of a rule book. Can you clarify what that meant?
Okay. There's the I can't think what it's called. Do you remember, Colleen, what it's called, or Kimberly? There's a big Robert's Rules of Order, which has everything more than you'll ever need. There is a smaller one that is a revised that condenses it, almost like a Reader's Digest version. And you can find it on Amazon. So
okay.
So you can look there, or if there's any bookstores left when this is all over, you can find it at a bookstore, of course. So okay.
Okay, thanks.
I will, if you email me, I'll look for mine and I'll look at what it's exactly called on the book, and I can email you the answer, but I don't have it right in front of me right now.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, part of your duties is to attend every meeting. Of course, everybody has some reason they are ill, or the child's ill, or whatever, you can't attend. And in that case, the president would appoint a parliamentarian pro tem for that meeting only. Somebody would sit in your chair and do the duties of the parliamentarian. But your main job is to attend all the meetings. You are the president's advisor. But as I said, only if the president asks for your advice. Don't interrupt them in the middle of talking to correct them. You are also the bylaws committee chairman automatically, and the president appoints people to be on the bylaws committee. It should be an odd number, 3 or 5, something like that. So that the reason we have that on committees is you don't want to have an even number because you're going to have ties all the time. This way, when you're voting on something, you have an uneven number. So when it's time for the bylaws to be reviewed, you will call the bylaws committee meeting, and you will meet with your committee, and you will review them and bring it back to the board with your recommendations. And you need to review the bylaws and the standing rules annually. That doesn't mean you change anything annually unless you wish to. You may want to raise dues if things have gotten too expensive and you need to raise dues. But other than that, you just review them and then approve them as they are. You instruct the nominating committee. When the nominating committee is elected, which it should be elected, it's not appointed. No one raises their hand and asks to be on it. It should be elected at your association meeting, and when you elect the nominating committee, if the parliamentarian runs for that and gets voted in to be on that, then he or she is on it. If not, they are not automatically on the nominating committee. They only are on if they get voted in like anybody else. Okay, and your bylaws will tell you how many people should serve on the nominating committee. It's usually 3 or 5, depending on how many people you have. Okay. Part of your parliamentary duties is the nominating committee, as we discussed. After the nominating committee is elected, you as parliamentarian go to the first meeting. You convene that meeting and you start off the meeting. And you run the nominating committee chairman election. At that first meeting, you will hold an election to ask for somebody to be the chair of the nominating committee. Now, the nominating committee may only be 1 or 2 meetings, but they're the chair for that time. And then when the committee is disbanded, then they are no longer chair. The parliamentarian also at that meeting goes over the committee procedure. It explains what I often, the district, give them a handout of things they need to look for and things when they're trying to decide who should serve on their board or who the recommendations are. And then the parliamentarian leaves. Unless he or she were voted onto the committee. So it's just a matter of convening it and setting the date for that first meeting with the committee and then meeting. Okay, if you are elected as an alternate, because usually your bylaws also say how many alternates you have on your nominating committee. If you're elected as an alternate, you do not attend the meeting unless someone is not there. If someone is not there, they get sick or their child gets sick, then you might be called as the first alternate to come to that meeting. And then you are a member of that committee until the nominations process is done. The person who was sick or whatever the reason was that couldn't be there is off the committee. They cannot come back in midstream. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, next please. Sorry. All right, parliamentary procedure is a time-tested method of conducting business at meetings. We do use Robert's Rules of Order for our parliamentary procedure, but this is the caveat. If your bylaws contradict what Robert says, your bylaws trump Robert, and that's just the way it is. Your bylaws are the #1 guide for setting your conducting your business at your meeting. So if it conflicts with what Roberts has to say, then the bylaws come first. Okay, next. All right, parliamentary law, the basics of it. You maintain order. You're an you have equal opportunity on the board as the parliamentarian. You maintain justice and making sure that everybody is fair and everybody has the chance to be heard. That's the right of the minority to be heard. Everybody has a chance to be heard. But the majority will decide in a vote. So that's the parliamentary law basics: order, equal opportunity, justice, the right of the minority to be heard, and the right of the majority to decide. Okay, next. All right. If you wish to make a motion, the first thing you need to do is raise your hand and obtain the floor. The president then needs to call on you. And even if it's something that's a function of the parliamentarian does not call on people. The president is the only one that can call on people. So the president will call on you. You will get the floor, and that's #2, recognition by the chair. Then you will make your motion. Then someone in the room needs to second the motion. Now, if it's something you disagree with, it doesn't mean you can't second it, because the only reason you're seconding. I'm sorry? You have a question? Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay. If you make a motion, if someone makes a motion and then you want to second it, even if you don't agree with it, you may second it. The only reason you're seconding it means to get it open for discussion and to be a
Wait a minute. I didn't do anything. You're good.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Something just came on the screen asking me to unmute.
We can hear you,
Good.
Linda.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay. I'm going to go back to where I was. You're making the motion to second it just so it can be discussed. If it's not seconded, it's a dead motion. So you can still second the motion and then vote against it when it comes time to vote. Somebody say something?
You gotta go back.
What?
Sorry.
Are we waiting for something?
No, keep going.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, the motion is seconded. Then when after that happens, the chair restates the motion so that everybody understands the motion. Then debate or discussion is opened up, and you can then discuss it after it's seconded. Then you put the question. Putting the question means you call for the vote. The president calls for the vote, and then after the vote, the chair announces the result. She will say motion adopted or motion defeated. Okay, next. If you wish to amend a motion, if the motion is too vague and you think it needs more information, you can insert words or add words. If you think there's some unnecessary words in there or things that you don't like, you can also strike the words by raising your hand and asking to strike a sentence or certain words. You can also strike some words and insert different words. If you're trying to make the motion, sometimes, if any of you have been to convention, they'll do that quite often during the general session. People will go to the mic and they'll want to change the motion to make it more powerful or to make it more specific. So that you can strike words and insert other words. If you don't like the whole paragraph, you can substitute one paragraph for another. I will tell you that all my years in a unit, this stuff doesn't happen very often in a unit. Maybe occasionally, but this is not something you're going to have to deal with as much as you would, like, say, on the state level. Okay, next. Okay, there are various methods of voting. One is the voice vote, where you just say all those in favor say aye, which is what you have most often. All those opposed say no. Then you can have a show of hands vote, where you want people to raise their hands because you can't tell by the voice. Sometimes people will shout their answer. It makes it sound like more people said aye than they really did. So you might want to show their hands. If you have a large group and you still can't determine, you can have a roll call of the room, in which people will stand up and they'll count down. And the minute they say their number, like 1 sits down, 2 sits down, 3 sits down. And that way you can be sure of how many people are exactly in the room. And then it's an easier way of getting the vote. If you've got, they do that quite often at convention when there's so many people that the chair cannot tell whether it was yes or no because it sounds almost equal. There's also a ballot vote. You can have a ballot vote if someone requests it. If someone says, no, this is something I'd like to do in secret because maybe it's a hot button issue and they're afraid that people will condemn them or treat their child differently for the way they vote, then they might want to have a ballot vote. If you're running an election, and more than one person runs for a position, you have to have a ballot vote. We don't just raise hands for one or the other so everybody can see who voted for who, because we try to spare feelings that way. So we have a ballot vote at that point. And if you have a ballot vote, the chair will appoint 3 credential people who are not running in that particular issue or whatever it is, or not running for that election, to count the votes. And they'll go out of the room, count the votes, hand the result to the chair, and he or she will announce the winner of the election. There's another vote by general consent. You don't usually do this with a financial vote because you really need a real motion for that, but you might just by general consent agree to do something. And that happens every once in a while. And that's called general consent, and you don't have to make an official motion. Next. One of the questions that people ask me quite often is, can I send my husband to vote for me or whatever if I'm not there. And no, you may not. Voting by proxy is strictly prohibited. If you want to vote, you have to be in the room. And if there's any kind of action that you voted on that was taken in violation of bylaws, they are null and void. We have often been called out to schools where they've held an election and it wasn't done according to procedure and somebody complained about it to the district. We had to go out there and redo the election. And when we do that, sometimes the result is different because it wasn't done properly and the same person may not win that election or whatever. So you have to be very careful to do it according to procedure. And if you're not sure how to do it according to procedure, you can always invite a district member or a council member. Your council president can come out and come to your meeting and help you, assist you with that. And if your council's not available, then you can call someone on district. Kimberly's leadership, you can call her, or you can call anybody, or you can call me if it's a parliamentarian thing. Okay. Non-members may not make motions, debate, or vote. We're a membership organization. If people wish to speak or have an opinion or anything else, they must be a member. So that is why we recommend that you tell people to bring their cards. People don't know where their cards are, even though nowadays they can get electronically and it should be on their phone. But still, they don't always know. So we ask schools to keep a membership list. And then when people check in for an association meeting, the list is checked off. And you might want to give people who are members a little piece of colored paper or something to hold up so that you can tell, because you can't, I don't like the idea. Some people separate them by having voters on one side, non-voters on the other. And I think that's segregating. So it's better to have something that you can hold up so that when they vote, they hold it up, you know that they in fact are a member because they were checked in at the door that way. Any questions on voting?
No.
Nope. Okay, next. Your bylaws. They are a legally binding document. We keep copies of all your bylaws when they're done in our district office in our file. I've had some inquiries about what their most current bylaws are in the file. I can't go in there right now. So our office help does go in there occasionally, not every day, but they're in there. And I have had Anna Ruth look up bylaws for me and let you know in case you have a question about your bylaws. So you can always contact me. They are a legally binding document. That's why I said I can tell you they're kind of like your Bible. They're not a guideline. They must be followed, and that's why they trump Robert's rules. They're legally binding. Your rules that cannot be changed and they cannot be suspended ever. You cannot suspend your bylaws. Say, let's for this meeting, let's just forget that rule and go do what we want. No, you may not do that. Okay, because that's when you would come in to being susceptible to being challenged by somebody. Okay, next. All right, but what's in the bylaws? I normally, if I was doing this at a school in person, I would have a copy of the bylaws and I would go over it with you. But for now, I'm just going to do this. I'm sure most of you have copies of your bylaws. If you do not, be sure and let me know because you should have had it handed down to you from the previous parliamentarian. It has the name of your organization, and that's your legal name. That's the name that's filed with California State PTA. You can't just change it whenever you feel like without submitting a change of status form. So whatever the legal name of your organization is, we have it on file at our district office as well. That's the name you must use. It talks about the purposes of PTA, the policies of PTA, talks about your membership, what your dues are. And that's the thing that most people are going to want to change more often than anything else. It also tells the officers of your PTA. That's also something that people want to change. Sometimes they don't like the fact that the previous people had 3 vice presidents in there and they have no way of electing 3 vice presidents. And if it's in your bylaws, they have to be elected because if you have them in there, if they aren't elected, then they still count against your quorum. And you may have a problem reaching quorum to vote on something if you do not have the number of officers stated. So my advice to people is, if you aren't sure, just have 1 vice president, the executive vice president or the first vice president. Don't go crazy until you're sure you can until you're sure what kind of leadership you have and if you can fill those positions. Okay, next. It also talks about your association meetings, when they are. That's also in the bylaws as far as it doesn't say December 1st. It says the first Tuesday of these months, and it lists the months. Association meetings, you only need to have 3 a year. However, we recommend more than that because if you only have 3 a year, everything you spend money on needs to be voted on by your association. And that means you'll have to really plan ahead. If you want to do an event later on, and you don't have an association meeting before then, you're kind of hamstrung. So you need to, we recommend 4 or 5. At least I recommend 4 or 5. I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but I recommend 4 or 5 a year. I do not recommend having them every month like some schools do, because you're going to burn out people. And by the end of the year, you aren't going to have anybody there, and you may have trouble even meeting quorum. And also you burn out your board because they're going to 2 meetings every month besides their committee meetings or whatever else. Okay, your executive board meeting, that has to be held every single month. So there's no question on that one. You have to have an executive board meeting every month. And that will also be spelled out in your bylaws, what day of the week it is. Your association meetings have to be 14 days after your board meetings. So so on the months you have association meetings, they best have 14 days in between. So you cannot just have an executive board meeting and right after have an association meeting. So you need to spell it out in your executive board that makes sure that your meetings are 14 days before when your association meetings would normally be held. Your committees are spelled out. If you aren't sure of the committees at this point, you can leave that part, blank. Some of this is in standing rules. You can leave that part a little bit blank and not worry about filling them out yet, because the president can add committees for anything he or she would like. They can have a committee for fundraising. They can have a committee for membership. If you don't have one of your VPs being the membership chair, then you can make a committee for that. So sometimes people leave that blank until they're sure. It talks about your council membership, where you have when your council, that you need to attend, that have a person to attend the council, and it usually is the president. If the president cannot attend, then someone else needs to attend those meetings. They are once a month. It talks about chartering a PTA, the charter procedure. However, units do not charter, councils do not charter, and units do not charter anything. You must call district if you're trying to charter a new PTA at a school. This just gives you the information, but you must call us and we will send, and Kimberly would come out with people to help her charter your PTA. It talks a little bit about state PTA and national PTA. The articles of the organization, your ID numbers in your fiscal year. Our fiscal year in our district, everybody is the same. It's from July 1st to June 30th. There are no variations. That is our fiscal year. It talks about parliamentary authority, any amendments, and then there's a signature page that needs to be signed when the bylaws are adopted by your association and signed by the state parliamentarian. When you submit bylaws to your council, they will submit them to me, that I will look them over, that I will send them to state. If state approves them, she will, it's a woman right now, will sign the bylaws and send them back to me. I will then put them back in your council president's box, who will then give them back to you. Then you have the association meeting to vote to accept them, not before you send them to me. They will be accepted, and then your secretary and your president signs the bylaws. And you should have several signature pages in there, 4 to be exact. And you should send one of the signature pages signed by your secretary and your president back to the council president so they know they were adopted, and send one to the district office so we know they were adopted. We do keep them in our file. Also, at the end of your bylaws are your standing rules. Standing rules used to be very small. Now there's more stuff in the standing rules than there is in the bylaws. A lot of the stuff was taken out of the bylaws and put into the standing rules. Okay, next. Okay, who gets a copy of the bylaws? Well, first of all, the president should have one, the secretary should have one, and the parliamentarian. But every board member should have a copy of the bylaws. They should all be aware of what your rules are if they're on your board. And any member, upon request, if someone who is a member, you have to see their membership card or they have to be on your membership list, they can request your bylaws and you need to show them to them. You don't need to show them to somebody who is not a member. That's why we don't recommend you keeping a copy in the office, because any parent can come in and look at them. And if they're not a member, they are not privy to your bylaws. That's why we're a membership organization. You need to update them. You need to review them annually. Just like I said, have your committee, but you need to update them, and this is wrong. It was changed last year at convention. You need to update them now every 5 years, not every 3 years anymore. They haven't given me a new PowerPoint yet, but it's been changed. So every 5 years, you have to send them in. And I prepare a list that goes to your council presidents at the council presidents roundtable meeting, which they then share with the unit presidents, and he or she should share with you as parliamentarian, which says when your next bylaws are due. And if they're already due and you're overdue, I'll have in big all caps, it'll say need now. If they're pending, that means I've sent them off to state and we're waiting for them to get back. But otherwise, it'll give you the dates, so you'll know. If you for some reason don't get that paper, just look on the last page of the bylaws where this parliamentarian from state signs it. She'll also date it. And it's 5 years from that date that they're due again. Okay, next. Any questions?
Well, someone wants to know where they can get a copy of the bylaws.
Of their current copy, and you have a completed current copy?
Yes.
Okay. If I said earlier this presentation, I had one school call me and she could only find bylaws back from 2015. She said, we must have a more current one. Could you check? Well, it took me a while to check because I had to wait for Anna Ruth to go into the office, but she went into the office yet this week. And she did find out that, yes, that in fact was their current bylaws. So they haven't had one since 2015. It means they need to have time to do it. So we keep a copy, but it's not in my house. It's in the district office. So you have to be patient with me. If you need a copy, Anna Ruth can make you a copy when she's in. And if you make an appointment, she has told me if you make an appointment to come in and pick up your copy of the bylaws, if you need to redo your bylaws or for whatever reason, you need to make an appointment to make sure she's there. She's not there every day. No one is. And we only have one person at a time in the office because of COVID-19. So you need to call her and when they're ready. But I will, if you contact me, and I'm going to give you my email right now if you have pen and paper handy. You all ready? Yes, I read that chat. Yes, council presidents usually do have a copy, but not always. Sometimes, just like as a unit job, the previous council parliamentarian all that stuff disappears when they go out of office, and it doesn't always get handed down. But yes, when I get the bylaws back from state, I take the originals, I put them in the box for the council president to get back to the unit. I make 2 copies, one for the council president to keep or council parliamentarian to keep if they have one, and one for the district file, which I put in the district file. So yes, they are given a copy, but whether they still have them or not. But if you don't have a council parliamentarian does not have one, then you're free to contact us. Okay, my email is lross, LROSS, PTA @hotmail.com.